On STC, we're looking at a couple of problems for Apple in light of the launch of iPhone 13 and iOS 15, things you need to know. And also, has Microsoft just killed the password once and for all? Delighted to welcome Jake Moore, ESET's Jake Moore, as a special guest on STC this week. Kate's taking a well-deserved week off. And I think some of the stuff we're talking about is right up your street, Jake, so it should be a good conversation.
Yeah,
David, should we start with Windows and Microsoft and password killing?
Yeah, indeed. Look, Microsoft have been talking about going passwordless for years. I think I wrote my first Microsoft Says the Future is Passwordless story 2.5 years ago for Forbes. But it's all changed. They've actually done it. Now they've gone passwordless for Microsoft accounts. Obviously, it's not quite as straightforward as you might think, but largely so. So
you finally succeeded and seen off passwords. I know you've been campaigning for this for a few years now, Davey, so it's finally happened.
Yeah, passwords are, let's face it, terrible. They're horrible things. From the security point of view, they are one of the weakest things you can have because nobody does them properly. So yeah, I've been campaigning for getting rid of passwords for quite a while. And indeed, as soon as Microsoft toggled this switch that allows you to turn passwords off completely for your Microsoft account, I went and did it. And it's really straightforward. You just go into your Microsoft account, you go to the advanced settings, security settings, opt for passwordless, turn passwords off.
I think it sounds absolutely brilliant. I'm with you there, David, but you said one thing in that. It's when you go to the advanced settings. Loads of people out there, let's talk about the normal user, they don't ever play around with the advanced settings. You know, we love playing around with them. We learn little tricks about the apps that we're using, about what is out there, how to make that application or platform better for us or more secure. But without people going and delving into this, they might not do that. Now, they're not forcing people to go passwordless. There'll be people out there that are still using their trusty dogsname.1, for example. And so why would they want to do that unless their hand is forced? So my worry is that only the security conscious people out there will think, fantastic, I can get rid of my rubbish password, even though for them it would have been a fantastic one. They'll get rid of that and go and use authenticator apps and security keys, which are far better for them. And the other people, well, they're going to use their old ones, aren't they?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. I think the success of this depends on how Microsoft push it to the public, to the user. Look, users will go for alternatives, better alternatives, more secure alternatives to passwords, if it makes life easier for them. And that's been proven well and truly with Windows 10, and as we get to Windows 11 now, with Windows Hello, the facial biometric option. I think it's something like 85% of people log in now sign in using their face. So that's worked because Microsoft made it not the default, but the best option. This is the one we recommend, use this. And people found it worked. If they push people to go passwordless when they try and sign into their Outlook account or their Office account or whatever that they, or even Windows that they use their Microsoft account for, then I think it'll work. Otherwise, I agree. Yeah, it's only going to be a small percentage, at least to start with.
What I'd like to test, though, is the fact that some people will be worried about using passwordless entry, maybe if they are worried they might lose their device. So if they're going to lose their key, their phone, their laptop. I think I'd like to go and test that first before I jump into it.
I felt exactly the same, Jake. I've been talking to Microsoft this week ahead of the toggling of the switch, and I asked this exact same question.
Okay.
And I've been assured that a user will still be able to recover their account if they have access to their other verification options, such as email or a phone number. And if they have two-step verification enabled, which you can still have a two-step verification with passwordless, the passwordless option, then they need to provide codes sent to two different verification options.
It's like it's resetting your password every time you want to go into it. Because if you say you forget your password, but you've set up two-factor authentication and they'll just send you the code via whichever method you've chosen, it's effectively doing that each time. So of course it helps without having to have a password to remember.
Because I mean, the way this works, I should explain the way this works is Microsoft Authenticator app doesn't give you codes, etc. All this actually does is when you go to sign in to your Microsoft account, you'll get a notification on your phone via the Microsoft Authenticator app saying, is that you? Do you want to sign into your Microsoft account? You just say yes, and you're in. That's it. It's so simple.
Well, this is Microsoft. It's brilliant, right? Apple started it, Google's doing it. This ecosystem, trusted device verification is fantastic. And if you've got it with whatever mobile operating system you use, it's so seamless. It's a good way to enable new devices, to enable whatever you've backed up, to secure access to different accounts. And then if you lose a device, you know you're not compromised. And if you lose a password, you know you're not compromised. So I guess Microsoft doesn't have the OS ecosystem that Apple and Google has, but is now doing it the best way it can. But it is, in essence, doing what the others are doing, and it is about time. I think it works so well.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I should say that is if you're a Windows 10 user, for example, or soon to be Windows 11 user, you can go completely passwordless now, but you have to use your Microsoft account for your sign-in on Windows 10. If you're using a local account, then you still need a password in the background, even if you're using Windows Hello. But you can get rid of passwords completely. Just swap over to Microsoft account for your sign-in, and they're gone.
So talking of ecosystems, obviously we've seen the launch of iPhone 13 and iOS 15, and I know that the media is now wall to wall with what the devices have and don't have, and what the software is going to do and doesn't do. But a couple of things I'm looking at this week are just interesting quirks in what's happened, things that aren't going so well. First one is iMessage, and a week ago we saw WhatsApp finally announcing that it would end-to-end encrypt backups. The system it's put in place is really clever. It is using either you can create your own 64-character backup password, or it will, in essence, put a simple password-protected encryption key into a third-party locker that it doesn't have access to. And if you forget your password, you won't have access to either. But the whole point is it has taken WhatsApp backups away from Apple and Google's oversight or access on their cloud backup services. And it's been under pressure to do so for a while. But I guess this puts iMessage under scrutiny because iMessage doesn't have the same level of easy encrypted backup optionality.
And not least, it stops all these people that as soon as you mention WhatsApp's end-to-end encryption say, oh yeah, but the cloud's not encrypted. Yeah.
In fairness to WhatsApp, and I was very critical of WhatsApp at the time, but in fairness, what they've done in the last few months with, disappearing messages, encrypted backups, multi-device access, is almost the things we've been complaining about for 4 or 5 years. It's like waiting for buses. They've all suddenly turned up, and it's quite compelling because you look at WhatsApp now and it is really different. And then we saw the silly story of last week, which was, Facebook is reading encrypted WhatsApp messages. So I think Facebook, because Facebook owns WhatsApp, there'll always be critics. But in fairness, as a secure messaging platform goes, it's very good. It's pretty thorough right now.
This is all about users getting on board and using these things.
Exactly what I was going to say.
I use Signal because Signal is private. Signal is secure and private. It's brilliant. But most people won't be using Signal. Most people will be using WhatsApp.
I think it's really interesting with WhatsApp because I've talked about this before. WhatsApp is a quasi-global phone network because we all think of WhatsApp. We're talking about it now as a messenger. It's a phone company. Billions of phone calls, encrypted video calls now. In my work life, I tend not to make normal cellular phone calls. I tend to call over either Signal or WhatsApp simply because I want an encrypted and then to an encrypted phone call. And that's really interesting because we don't talk about that so much in the security stuff that we look at. So another thing to look at is that, and the fact that WhatsApp is really big in parts of the world that do not have access to secure communications of any sort. It's predominantly on Android. It's huge in markets like Indonesia and Brazil, through South America, parts of Africa, through Southeast Asia, which doesn't have access to what we would in the West consider to be secure communications. WhatsApp has become this quasi-network. WhatsApp backlash, WhatsApp's backtrack on its forced change of terms was really triggered by regulators in certain key markets around the world, basically places like India and Brazil, just saying no. And I think that sent a message to Facebook, which was so far and no further. And, you know, you've created or accidented upon a global telco, and telcos are regulated and WhatsApp isn't regulated. And it was almost like it kind of is regulated, just not formally. And I think this is part of that same thing.
What gets me is this is something else that we talk about on STC all the time, is the optics of the thing. And Facebook and WhatsApp, or Facebook with WhatsApp in particular, seem to have realized that the optics are important, and that all of a sudden security and privacy are really important issues to an awful lot of people. And they're making these changes, which is great. And when we talk about optics, we have to talk about Apple, because Apple's optics aren't as great, are they? We've had the problems with CSAM and the backtracking there, but also with the launch of the iPhone 13 yesterday. That sums Apple up a little bit for me at the minute. I mean, what a massive launch event for what? I mean,
exactly for what exactly?
I'm thinking about, do I need an iPhone 13? Is it going to be better than my iPhone?
Could you tell if you had one? I mean, would you know? possibly
a little bit, but I don't do much in the way of videography on my iPhone, so I don't know. Have Apple got the optics?
Funnily enough, actually, do you know what? That was the one thing that I was interested in the filming side of things. I've always wanted to be able to film in portrait mode, but photography in their portrait mode still isn't that good. So I'm not completely convinced yet it will be as good. I mean, they say it is amazing, but of course these events always do. But like you, I was rather underwhelmed by what they're offering. But then at the same time, it's been a difficult year for them in their research, in their components, in their everything. It's difficult for them. But what they have done the last year is added privacy at more of a core to what they're offering. And that, I think, is something to be said far more than hardware over the last year.
But doesn't the whole CSAM scandal then just unravel all that good work that they've done?
Yes, and that is the flip side to the privacy of individuals can then be thrown under the bus when you've got the CSAM situation. It's a horrible problem, because I've been on the law enforcement side of things, so I know how difficult it is in getting any evidence. And I can imagine they've got all law enforcement, FBI, MI5, you name it, are hammering Apple, all of them. And I know they are hammering them for that evidence that is behind closed doors. And they're thinking, well, what can we do? We're seeing law enforcement and technology firms banging against their heads against each other.
I think that's right. And I think this is the other thing we're looking at this week is Apple's got itself into a bit of a trap, if we're honest, because its answer to CSAM was to push this whole on-device privacy. And the idea was great, because what it said was, idea was great on the whiteboard, because what it said was, we don't want to look at all your photos. We only want to look at photos that might be flagged as potential matches to known CSAM material. So under your control on your device, we'll run some machine learning matching ultimately. And if there are any flags, then we'll look at just the flagged images, otherwise we'll ignore it. Huge backlash. You know, my iPhone is my castle. What happens on the iPhone stays on the iPhone. All the rest of it. Apple backtracks, following in the wake of, you know, Facebook and WhatsApp earlier in the year, and Google and Flock, another privacy backtrack, this time from Apple. But then it's now in a bit of a trap, because it clearly needs to do something. It said it's going to do something. Is it really going to try and come up with another way to sell us on on-device screening? That was a disaster. But it's also thrown cloud screening under something of a bus, because it said, look, you know, it's not very private. We can do it better on device. So it really needs to do something in the next few months, way ahead of the next iPhone. I don't think it'll get away with not having answered this in the next 12 months. So it backtracked to avoid taking the shine off the iPhone 13 launch. And over the next year, it's got to somehow square this circle. And I'm not sure how they solve this problem.
And you know what? I don't think anybody's sure. Look, let's face it, Zach, you know more than most people about this stuff because of your day job, right? Jake, you know more than most people because of your old day job about this stuff. I know quite a lot about this stuff from 30 years in the business and being grandfather of 7, father of 8. You know, we all want to stop this child exploitation and child abuse, but none of us know how to do it. And that goes for Apple, that goes for all of the big telcos. technology companies, nobody knows how to do it, do they?